The oversight hearing on the President's fiscal year 2014 budget for tribal programs will come to order. I welcome our witnesses today. The President's overall request for Indian Affairs at the Department of Interior is $2.6 billion, which represents a $31 million increase over fiscal year 2012 enacted level, and the Indian Health Service budget was increased $124 million for a budget total of $4.4. And although we look at these increases, we also must acknowledge the difficult financial times that we are in. And on March 1st, 2013, sequestration took effect and mandated automatic across the boards and federal programs. Sequestration will have a significant impact on tribal governments, and an anticipated cut of $120 million in programs at the Department of Interior and $220 million in reductions to programs at Indian Health Services. At the Indian Health Services, sequestration cuts will reduce the number of patients to be able to be seen, both inpatient and outpatient visits, and at the Department of Interior, tribal schools will be forced to furlough employees, and significant cuts will be made to general assistance programs, which provide things like food and rent and clothing, so to some who are in most need. To me, if we are cutting these valuable programs, there's more that we need to do. It's important in our discussions here today to acknowledge the unique legal obligations the federal government has towards Indian tribes. The trust responsibility is grounded in the United States constitutions and treaties and federal statutes and the Supreme Court decisions, so it is important that we look at how we fund tribal programs. We understand that tribal programs are acknowledgement of a government-to-government relationship that exists between tribes and the federal government. Despite the budgetary constraints we face, there are some positive highlights in this President's fiscal year 2014 budget. I'm pleased to see the administration focus on the stewardship of natural resources in Indian country, and in addition applaud the administration's constant support for Indian health programs, energy development, and public safety. There are some areas, however, that are not receiving the attention that they deserve, and hopefully today's hearing we can illuminate some of these issues. For tribal communities to thrive, and for now and into the future, they must be economic development opportunities and workforce opportunities. I note that this year's budget request contains a decrease in economic development funding for Indian country, despite a moderate increase in overall education funding, and it contains no funding for school construction. My colleagues and I have heard numerous committee hearings of the poor conditions at many of the Bureau of Indian schools across our nation, but for the past 2 years, the administration has not requested any funding for school construction. In fact, if we compare the two federally operated systems, like the Department of Defense schools, and the Bureau of Indian Affairs, you can see that the spending for the Department of Defense schools is now $753 million, while the Bureau of Indian Education construction remains at zero. So I'm certain we are going to be asking questions about this today and working with the agency on this issue. The President's budget request also contains two legislative recommendations. One recommendation to clarify the Secretary of Interior's authority to take land into trust for tribes, and is familiar, as many of our colleagues here have talked about, a car-share fix. Since the 2009 Supreme Court decision, the committee has held numerous hearings and passed legislation out of this committee, both in the 111th and the 112th Congress, and I'm pleased that resolving this issue will be one of our top priorities, and I know it is for the administration as well. The second legislative issue is the Raima versus Salazar case. In that case, the court decided that the government is responsible for full payment of contract support for those tribes who take over the programs for federal government. The courts further stated that it is up to Congress to either fully fund this appropriation or to address this issue legislatively. This is an important issue that impacts every tribe in the country, since every tribe has at least one self-determination contract with the Indian Health Services or the Department of Interior. The administration has proposed a legislative solution. However, this committee has not conducted oversight issues on it, so I think it's just safe to say we're going to have to drill down on this and have lots of conversation about this issue. I look forward to hearing from all of the witnesses today, including those on the second panel, and I'd like to extend a special welcome to John Cyrus from my home state of Washington. He's the chairman of the Confederated Tribe of the Colville Reservation, and we'll see him on the first panel. So I'd now like to turn to my colleague, the Vice Chairman of the Committee, Senator Barrasso, for his opening statement.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairwoman.